Ragnarok, epic battle of the gods. Thor versus Jörmungandr and Odin versus Fenrir. Chapter 1. The Weaving of Destiny. Beneath the roots of the great world tree Yggdrasil lies the well of Ord, a spring as ancient as time itself. From its depths flows the water of memory and fate, seeping into the roots of the tree, keeping it alive and binding all realms together. It is here that the Norns dwellered verdandi and schooled the weavers of destiny. Day and night they sit upon the stone, carving runes into the trunk of Yggdrasil. With each stroke they shape the threads of what was, what is, and what shall come. Even the gods do not escape their weaving. Not Odin, not Thor, not Freyr, not even Loki. All are bound to the runes of the Norns. It was here, one shadowed dawn, that Odin Allfather came, cloaked in a dark hood, his single eye gleaming with the fire of sacrifice. He sought the whispers of destiny. The crows Hugin and Munin circled above, carrying thoughts and memory. Yet even they could not pierce the depths of what the Norns knew. Odin stood before them in silence, for he knew that words could not sway them. At last, Ord raised her gaze, her face lined with the weight of the past. "You seek knowledge of what is to come," she said, her voice like the groaning of ancient wood. "I seek to know the fate of gods and men," Odin answered. "I have given my eye to Mimir's. Well, I have hung upon Yggdrasil for 9 nights. I have endured pain beyond measure for wisdom. Tell me what doom awaits Asgard." Verdandi, who weaves the present, shook her head. "The threads are already spun. The pattern unfolds as it must." But it was Skuld, youngest of the Norns, who spoke then, her voice like a blade cutting through silence. "Ragnarok." The word hung in the air like thunder, and even Odin, who had faced giants and devoured wisdom, felt a tremor in his heart. "The twilight of the gods," Skuld continued. "The wolf shall break his chains. The serpent shall rise from the sea. Fire shall sweep from the south, and the sky itself shall split. Brothers will slay brothers. Fathers will slay sons. The gods will fall, and the world will burn." Odin's hand tightened upon Gungnir, his spear of unerring aim. "And is there no escape, no path to avert this fate?" Ord's eyes gleamed like still water. "None. The runes are carved. The end is written as surely as the beginning," Verdandi added. "The only question is not whether the doom comes, but how you will face it." For a long time Odin stood, the wind whispering through Yggdrasil's branches. He was the Allfather, ruler of Asgard, yet even he was bound by destiny's threads. He could not stop the coming storm, but he could prepare. When he turned to leave, his ravens followed, cawing sharply as if echoing the dread that weighed upon him. As he mounted Sleipnir, his 8-legged steed, Odin's thoughts were dark. He knew the names spoken in prophecy: Fenrir the wolf, Jörmungandr, the World Serpent, Surtur, the fire giant. He knew the traitor Loki would play his part, as would the noble gods who would meet their end. The sun was rising as he rode back to Asgard, yet to Odin it seemed a pale, fragile light. For though the day had dawned, he carried within him the shadow of twilight. Thus began the long road to Ragnarok, not with fire, not with battle, but with the whisper of fate carved into the roots of Yggdrasil. The gods, mighty though they were, walked upon a path already laid. And Odin, for all his wisdom, knew he could only gather his strength for the inevitable end. And so the Norns continued their weaving. The tree shuddered in the wind. Far above, The eagle that perched at Yggdrasil's crown stretched its wings and screamed. The world still lived, but the first note of the final song had been sung. Chapter 2. The Allfather's Fear. The Allfather's mind was a storm. Even as he rode back to Asgard, the weight of the Norns' prophecy pressed upon him like a mountain. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, was inevitable. No amount of wisdom, no spear, no army could turn aside the threads of fate woven into Yggdrasil's roots. Odin paused atop the highest ramparts of Asgard, gazing over the golden halls of the gods. The realm shimmered under the morning sun, but its brilliance was hollow to him. Each wall, each tower, each gleaming spire seemed destined to crumble in the coming fire. Even Valhalla, Hall of the Slain, could not escape the doom foretold. He remembered the sacrifices he had made for knowledge, the bitter draught from Mimir's well, the 9 nights hung upon Yggdrasil, pierced by his own spear. Every agony had granted him visions of the wolf Fenrir breaking free, of Jörmungandr thrashing in the seas, of Loki orchestrating chaos with a grin that would haunt the cosmos. And yet the visions were incomplete, fleeting glimpses of a storm too vast to comprehend. Odin's one remaining eye burned with the weight of understanding. He saw the paths of men and gods alike, paths leading inexorably toward the battlefield of Vigrid. He called his ravens, Hugin and Munin, to perch upon his shoulders. "Bring me the thoughts of the realms," he said, his voice low-edged with urgency. "Tell me what stirs in Midgard, what stirs in Muspelheim, what whispers through the depths of Niflheim." The ravens circled above, then returned, whispering of men fighting men, of frost giants moving through the frozen north, of fires growing in distant lands. And always the gnawing dread, the steps toward the end had already begun. Odin turned his gaze inward, pondering the sons and daughters of gods and giants. Even those he loved, Thor, Freyr, Baldr, Tyrwood faced doom. Yet his heart quailed most at the role of Loki, the trickster whose cunning and malice would accelerate the unraveling of the cosmos. The Allfather knew that every act of malice, every subtle deception, was a spark on the tinder of fate. He convened a secret council in the high halls of Veloskadef. "Brothers and sisters, listen," he spoke, his voice reverberating like thunder. "The threads of destiny are fixed. Ragnarok approaches, and the shadow grows long. We cannot escape what is written, but we may choose how we meet it." Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, gleamed in his hand as he stepped forward. "Father, we will fight. Every foe, every giant, every demon shall fall before us." Odin nodded, but the grimness in his eye did not fade. "Bravery alone will not save us. You must understand, some will die, some will fail, and some will fall by the hands of kin. Even the bravest cannot alter the weave of fate. Our task is preparation, wisdom, and courage." In solitude, Odin climbed the Hall of Mirrors, a chamber of reflection and foresight. He closed his remaining eye and meditated, calling upon visions deeper than those seen from Mimir's. Well, he saw the last breath of gods, the final clash upon the plains of Vigrid, the fires consuming Yggdrasil itself, and he trembled not for himself, but for all that would be lost. He thought of the mortals in Midgard, small and fleeting, yet bound to the gods' fate. He saw them fighting, starving, loving, dying, teeny threads in the tapestry of the cosmos. And he understood the end was not just for Asgard, but for all 9 realms. Odin's fear was not of death, it was of the inevitability of failure. Even as Allfather, he could not bend destiny. All he could do was see, prepare, and guide. And yet, the shadow of uncertainty gnawed at him. Could wisdom alone tip the balance? Or was the war already lost before the first blow? As night fell, the Allfather mounted Sleipnir once more. The 8-legged steed's hooves struck sparks against the bridge of Bifrost, illuminating the river of rainbow light that spanned realms. Odin's mind raced, plotting, observing, calculating. Every action, every counsel, every alliance mattered. Deep might be a thread that could delay, if only briefly, the unraveling foretold by the Norns. He looked toward the horizon, where the frost giants stirred and the seas churned. Somewhere, Loki smiled in shadow. Chapter 3, The Trickster's Bloodline. From the darkened halls of Niflheim to the fiery plains of Muspelheim, the shadow of Loki stretched across the 9 realms. He was no ordinary god, nor a giant. He was a creature of both, a being woven from cunning, malice, and a spark of divinity. Even among the gods of Asgard, whispers spoke of him as a friend and a foe, a necessary chaos that could bring both laughter and ruin. But the Allfather knew that Loki was more than a trickster. In his heart, Odin felt the tremors of a storm that had been growing since the birth of the cosmos itself. Loki's bloodline would shape the fate of gods and men alike. For the children he would sire were not mere mortals, they were harbingers of destruction. It began with Angrboda, the giantess of the Ironwood, whose eyes held the cold knowledge of the deep earth. Loki, drawn by mischief and desire, walked through the frozen forests, unseen by the gods, until he came upon her. Their union was whispered by the winds across Midgard, and though hidden, the threads of destiny recorded it unerringly. 3 children came from this unholy union, each destined to challenge the order of the cosmos. First was Fenrir, the great wolf. Even as a pup, his teeth glinted like daggers of night. His howl echoed with the whispers of doom. The gods saw him and feared his strength, knowing that when he grew, no chain could hold him forever. They bound him first with ropes and chains, and finally with the magic ribbon Gleipnir, spun from impossible things, the sound of a cat's footfall, a woman's beard, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish. Fenrir's fury grew with each passing year, his resentment of the gods festering, ready to erupt when the time of Ragnarok came. Second was Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, cast into the ocean surrounding the world. As he grew, he encircled the lands, biting his own tail, a living Ouroboros, a threat to all life. The waves whispered of his return, the sea trembled beneath his coiling, and the seafarers prayed as storms raged, knowing the serpent's awakening would bring tides of destruction. Third was Hel, the ruler of the dead, whose half-living, half-rotting visage struck terror into both gods and mortals. Odin had hoped to contain Death's shadow within Helheim, but even there, her dominion grew, gathering those whose time in the mortal world had ended. She would open the gates when Ragnarok arrived, sending the dead to fight in the final war. Loki watched them from shadows, his heart a blend of pride and mischief. He whispered to them, sowing cunning and rebellion. "The Allfather may seek to bind you," he said, "but the threads of fate cannot hold what is meant to break free." And they listened, not merely as children, but as instruments of the chaos their father would unleash. The gods, sensing the peril, debated how to contain these children of malice. Tyr, brave among men and gods, offered courage to bind Fenrir, understanding the wolf's strength, yet unaware that such chains would only delay fate. Odin, knowing the full weight of prophecy sanctioned the bindings. Yet even he trembled, for he foresaw the day when Fenrir would break free, devouring the Allfather himself. Jörmungandr's confinement in the ocean seemed secure, yet the waves carried whispers of his return. "The serpent sleeps, but it dreams," said Midgard, guardian of the seas. "And in dreams the world trembles." Hel's shadow grew quietly, almost imperceptibly, her reach stretching through the mists of Niflheim. The dead stirred beneath her command, readying themselves for the day the living and the dead would clash in the fields of Vigrid and Loki, cunning, unrepentant, untamed, moved through the worlds like a thread through a loom, pulling, twisting, weaving chaos into the fabric of reality. He laughed at the gods, mocked their vigilance, and waited, knowing that the children he had sired were not mere beasts. They were the key to Ragnarok. Even Odin, wise beyond measure, could not look upon Loki without unease. The Allfather knew that the trickster's bloodline was more than a threat. It was destiny itself. Every howl of Fenrir, every wave stirred by Jörmungandr, every whisper of Helheim's dead carried the mark of prophecy. Thus, the road to Ragnarok was paved not only by mortal deeds or divine wars, but by the cunning of a god who sowed seeds of chaos long before the first signs of the end appeared. The trickster's bloodline would awaken, and with it, the threads of fate would tighten around the realms, pulling gods and men inexorably toward twilight. And in the shadows, Loki smiled, for he knew the dance of doom had only just begun. Chapter 4. The Children of Chaos. From the shadowed depths of Muspelheim to the icy reaches of Niflheim, the children of Loki stirred, unseen yet omnipresent, waiting for the day when the threads of destiny would unravel. Fenrir, Jörmungandr, and Helge, born of trickery and malice, were more than creatures. They were harbingers, the living embodiments of chaos itself. Fenrir, the wolf whose fur shimmered with the darkness of night, lay chained upon the desolate plains. His eyes burned with the fire of defiance, reflecting the doom written by the Norns Gleipnir. The magical binding woven from impossibilities held him for now, but every nerve, every muscle pulsed with impatience. The whispers of Loki reached him even here, teaching cunning, sowing hatred, and nurturing the knowledge that the day of freedom was inevitable. Across the world's seas, Jörmungandr coiled beneath the waves, a serpent so immense that the horizon bent to contain him. The Midgard serpent's scales gleamed with an emerald sheen, his gaze piercing the ocean depths. He circled the world, feeling every tremor, every stir of life above, learning patience while he waited for the tides of fate to signal his awakening. The whispers of Loki slithered into his mind. The Allfather fears you, the mortals dread you, and the end will answer only to your might. And in the shadowed halls of Helheim, Hel herself watched, half living, half dead, her form a mirror of decay and beauty intertwined. She commanded the spirits of the fallen, mortals who had perished in fire, in battle, in sickness, Saul answered to her call. Loki's words shaped her dominion, instilling cunning and ambition, teaching her the value of timing and the weight of inevitability. "Patience, my daughter," he murmured. "The day will come when the gates open, and the dead shall walk the fields of the living." The gods of Asgard could feel the tremors, subtle yet undeniable. Tears, courage alone could not quiet the growing fear. Thor's hammer, though mighty, could not strike the distant serpent or soothe the wolf's rage. And Odin, the All-Father, despite his wisdom and foresight, sensed that the threads of destiny had already begun to constrict. The children of chaos were bound in place, yet they were alive with the pulse of destiny, as though every heartbeat marked the countdown to destruction. The binding of Fenrir had been an act of necessity. Odin had recognized that the wolf's strength would one day challenge the gods themselves. Gleipnir, though strong beyond mortal comprehension, was only a temporary solution. Fenrir's growls echoed in dreams and nightmares alike, a reminder to all of Asgard that chains could delay fate but never deny it. Jörmungandr, encircling Midgard, carried the ocean's whispers in his enormous coils. Fishermen, sailors, and kings all felt the serpent's subtle influence in storms and tides. The serpent's presence was a shadow over the world, a constant reminder that the sea, too, was subject to chaos and that the natural order was fragile. Hel's influence, perhaps the most insidious, spread silently. From her cold realm, she nurtured ambition and cunning among the dead. The spirits she commanded were patient, knowing that when the time came, they would march to the battlefield of Vigrid. Her realm, dark and still, was alive with anticipation, a quiet, relentless preparation for the inevitable clash. And Loki watched from shadows beyond all realms. His laughter, quiet and sharp, echoed like a distant storm. Every action of the gods, every measure taken to delay catastrophe, only fueled his amusement. The children of chaos were his legacy, and through them he would shape the fate of all worlds. Even Odin, master of wisdom and foresight, knew that no strategy, no counsel, no spell, they were not just monsters. They were destiny incarnate, waiting for the moment when the threads would snap and the world would plunge into twilight. The wind carried whispers through Asgard and Midgard alike. The wolf howled in his chains, the serpent stirred in the seas, and the dead in Helheim whispered in anticipation. The road to Ragnarok was no longer a distant prophesied, was a path already being walked, and the children of chaos were the heralds who would guide the world toward its final hour. And so the All-Father prepared. As the sun dipped behind the golden spires of Asgard, Odin's mind raced with plans, foresight, and dread. The children of chaos were alive, patient, and inevitable. Their time would come, and when it did, the song of destruction would begin. Chapter 5. The Binding of Fenrir. The wolf's eyes gleamed with fury, reflecting the starlight as he stood upon the desolate plains, chains rattling round his massive limbs. Fenrir, child of Loki and Angrboda, had grown beyond the comprehension of gods and men alike. His muscles rippled with raw power, and each breath he drew seemed to shake the earth. Even Odin, Allfather of Asgard, could sense the looming threat of this creature whose destiny was entwined with the end of the gods. The gods gathered in secret, their faces grim. Tyr, brave among the Aesir, stepped forward. "We cannot ignore him," he said. "Fenrir grows too strong. One day he will break free, and none among us shall survive his rage." Odin nodded, his single eye gleaming with determination and sorrow. "We must bind him, not with ordinary chains, but with magic, cunning, and deception. Only thus can we delay the prophecy's fulfillment, if even for a time." The plan was simple, yet perilous. The gods forged Gleipnir, a ribbon spun from impossible elements. The sound of a cat's footfall, a woman's beard, the roots of a mountain, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. Light as silk, yet unbreakably strong, it was the only thing that might restrain the wolf. When Fenrir was brought forth, he sensed the trap, his head tilted, ears twitching, eyes narrowing. "What trickery is this?" he growled, the words vibrating with power. "Do you dare to chain me, the son of Loki?" "We do not desire your harm," Odin replied calmly, though his heart raced. "We bind you not for malice, but to protect all realms. You are too powerful, too wild. One day you will rage beyond control." Fenrir's mistrust burned within him. "And yet you bind me. You speak of protection while preparing deceit. Know this, when I break free, your halls will tremble, and even you, Odin, shall fall to my jaws." Tyr stepped forward, placing his hand upon the wolf's massive snout. "If you trust us even for a moment, allow this binding. We ask only patience, Fenrir." The wolf's eyes softened for the briefest instant, a flicker of curiosity and pride. Yet when he realized the nature of Gleipnir, suspicion returned like a storm. With a thunderous growl, he allowed Tyr to secure the magical ribbon around him. Fenrir struggled, testing the ribbon with his immense strength. It did not break. Every pull, every strain, every attempt to free himself failed. Rage erupted within him, a sound like the cracking of mountains. His eyes blazed, reflecting the inevitability of fate. Tyr, realizing the depth of deception, faced a terrible choice. He placed his hand in Fenrir's mouth, a gesture of trust and sacrifice, knowing the wolf would bite. And Fenrir did, clamping down with teeth sharp as obsidian. Tyr's arm was crushed, but he did not falter. His courage shone as brightly as any sword in Asgard. The wolf thrashed, his fury unmatched, yet Gleipnir held him fast. Each thrash shook the plains, rattling mountains and stirring storms across the seas. Fenrir howled, a sound that echoed through all 9 realms, carrying both defiance and despair. "You have bound me with lies and trickery," Fenrir growled, his voice trembling with anger. "I will break free, I will devour the gods, and none shall escape my vengeance. Remember this day, for it is only the beginning of your doom." Odin watched in silence, his heart heavy with sorrow. He knew the prophecy Fenrir would rise again during Ragnarok, and this act, necessary though it was, had only delayed the inevitable. Even the cunning of gods could not undo what fate had woven into the roots of Yggdrasil. The wolf's chains shimmered under the starlight, magical threads holding back the tide of chaos. Yet in Fenrir's eyes, a promise burned. The day would come when he would be free, and the world would tremble beneath his jaws. Thus, the first true harbinger of Ragnarok was restrained, yet not defeated. The road to twilight continued, and with each passing moment, the threads of destiny grew tighter, drawing gods, giants, and mortals alike toward the inevitable clash. Even in the halls of Asgard, a shadow lingered, a shadow born of cunning, fury, and destiny itself. Fenrir had been bound, but his spirit remained unbroken, and in the hearts of the gods, a fear lingered, quiet but ever present, the knowledge that the end was approaching, and no chain, however strong, could hold forever. Chapter 6. The Serpent of the Deep. Beneath the endless waves that lapped at the edges of Midgard, a shadow stirred, vast and eternal. Jörmungandr, the World Serpent, son of Loki and Angrboda, had grown beyond measure, his immense coils encircling the lands of men. His scales glimmered with the cold green of the deepest seas, and his gaze, sharp and endless, pierced through the waters, the storms, and even the hearts of men. Though bound to the ocean, Jörmungandr's presence was felt across Midgard. Ships trembled as he passed beneath, and waves rose like mountains at his slightest motion. Fishermen whispered his name, fearing the serpent who encircled the world. Yet few understood the depth of the threat, for Jörmungandr was no mere creature. He was destiny made flesh, a living omen of the twilight foretold by the Norns. The Allfather Odin knew of the serpent's growing strength. He sent his gaze across the seas, peering into the depths with foresight that even the ravens Hugin and Munin could not fully deliver. "The serpent waits," Odin murmured, his voice tinged with unease. "One day it will rise from the waters, and the oceans themselves will quake with its fury." Thor, the Thunderer, understood the danger keenly. Every voyage, every coastal village, every storm carried whispers of the serpent's looming threat. "Its coils touch the ends of the world," Thor said, gripping Mjolnir. "If it rises, not even our strength can withstand its fury. We must prepare, for the day of reckoning is near." Jörmungandr sensed the whispers of the gods, and it stirred. The waters heaved as he twisted and turned beneath the sea, each movement sending ripples across the lands of men. The waves crashed upon cliffs and shores, and in the storms that followed, sailors saw glimpses of a monstrous shadow stretching from horizon to horizon. Loki's laughter echoed in the depths, unseen and untouchable. "Patience, my son," he whispered to the serpent. "The time will come when the Allfather's schemes will fall, and your coils shall strangle the world. You are the harbinger, the serpent, whose bite will bring gods to their knees." The gods watched with trepidation, knowing that they had contained the serpent only temporarily. The waters of the world could not hold Jörmungandr forever, and when he emerged, the serpent's fury would be unmatched, a force of nature and prophecy combined. Hel, observing from her shadowed realm, understood the serpent's importance. "The serpent and the wolf, the dead and the trickster," she murmured. "They move the world closer to its twilight, each in their place, yet together they summon the end." Even among mortals, the presence of the serpent was felt. Storms arose without warning, tidal waves swallowed villages, and fishermen vanished without trace. Bards and poets sang of the great serpent that encircled the world, warning of a time when its rise would signal the final battle, the clash upon Vigrid and the fall of gods. In Asgard, Odin's heart was heavy. He foresaw the day when Jörmungandr would rise from the depths, coiling around the lands, thrashing with the might of oceans and storms. Thor would face the serpent then, and the clash would shake the heavens and shatter the seas. Yet even the Allfather could not see the outcome clearly. The threads of fate wove their own path, and the serpent's destiny was as inevitable as it was terrifying. The serpent's eyes gleamed with intelligence, not merely instinct. He knew he was bound by the ocean, yet he dreamed of the day he would confront the gods. Every current, every wave, every storm was a rehearsal, a preparation for the moment when prophecy would demand his emergence. And so, Jörmungandr lay beneath the waves, encircling the world, waiting. The oceans whispered his name, and the winds carried his presence. Even in slumber, he was a force of destiny, a reminder that no chain, no depth, no god could deny the tide of fate. Thus, the road to Ragnarok continued. Fenrir lay bound upon the plains, howling in defiance. Jörmungandr coiled in the seas, dreaming of vengeance, and Loki, ever cunning, smiled in shadow, knowing that the end was closer with every heartbeat, every storm, every ripple in the oceans. The Allfather looked to the horizon, where the sun kissed the sea, and he shivered. The serpent of the deep had begun its silent march toward the twilight of the gods. Chapter 7. The Queen of the Dead, beneath the frozen mists of Niflheim, where the cold never waned, and the shadows whispered secrets of the fallen. Hel ruled her dark dominion. Daughter of Loki and Angrboda, her visage was a mirror of life and death, half fair and radiant, half decayed and skeletal. She sat upon her throne of bones and shadow, gazing across the endless plains where the souls of the dead lingered. From her cold realm, the spirits stirred at her command. Those who had perished in battle, in sickness, and in despair answered to her call. They were neither living nor dead, yet they existed in service to her will, forming an army patient, relentless and inexorably bound to the coming twilight. Hel's voice carried across Niflheim like a bitter wind. "The time will come," she whispered, "when the living and the dead shall meet upon the fields of Vigrid. We will rise not out of hatred alone, but as destiny decrees. Every soul, every shadow, every echo of death will march at my command." The Allfather, Odin, had long known of Hel's potential. While she remained confined to her shadowed halls, her reach extended subtly into Midgard and Asgard alike. Omens appeared in dreams, and mortal hearts trembled before her unseen presence. Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, reported the stirring of the dead and the growing influence of Hel's dominion. The Queen of the Dead, however, was patient. She knew that the final hour had not yet come, and so she strengthened her army silently, instructing the spirits in tactics, awareness, and cunning. "Do not rise too soon," she commanded. "Wait for the signal, for the chaos of the living, and the fury of the wolf and serpent will herald our march." Loki, ever the trickster, watched her from beyond the veils of reality, unseen and unbound. "Patience, my daughter," he whispered. "Your time is near." Fenrir thrashes in chains, the serpent coils in the deep, and the Allfather trembles at the thought of what you will unleash. Wait, and when the moment arrives, the world will know despair. In the halls of Asgard, the gods sensed the growing darkness. Odin felt a chill as he foresaw the dead gathering under Hel's banner. Even mighty Thor, whose hammer could shatter mountains, could not grasp the full extent of her influence. Freyr, whose heart beat with the life of Midgard, shivered at the visions of spirits rising, flowing like rivers of shadow across the lands. Hel's patience was matched by her cunning. She opened her eyes to the spirits who lingered, half-bound to the mortal world, and whispered secrets of the Allfather, the gods, and the mortals themselves. "Learn," she said. "When you march upon Vigrid, knowledge will be as sharp as any blade, and fear will follow in your wake. We will rise not merely as the dead, but as the reckoning of fate itself." Her army grew in number and strength, yet their movements were silent, undetectable to mortals and gods alike. Niflheim's frost and shadow shrouded them, and even the winds of Midgard carried only a whisper of their preparation. Hel observed all, her gaze unflinching, knowing that patience and cunning were her greatest allies. The Allfather, despite his wisdom, could not ignore the threat. He pondered the balance of life and death, the inevitability of prophecy, and the cunning of Loki. Even as he plotted and prepared, he knew that the Queen of the Dead would play a decisive role in the twilight of the gods. Her army, patient and relentless, would march when the time came, and nothing in the 9 realms could prevent it. And so, in her shadowed halls, Hel watched, waited, and prepared. The frost of Niflheim seemed to thrum with life as her legions of the dead stood ready, silent, patient, and inevitable. The stage for Ragnarok was being set, and the Queen of the Dead was one of its central pillars, her influence reaching across realms like a dark thread through the fabric of destiny. In Asgard, Odin's heart was heavy, knowing that the shadow of Hel would soon stretch beyond her icy halls, enveloping the world. The Allfather's fear was not for himself, but for the inevitability of what was to come, the clash of gods, giants, and the dead, and the fire and blood that would follow. The road to Ragnarok continued, and the Queen of the Dead awaited her moment, patient, cunning, and eternal, ready to march when destiny demanded it. Chapter 8. The Seeds of Betrayal in the Hidden Corners of Asgard, where golden spires met shadowed alleys and the laughter of gods could not reach, a whisper of treachery began to grow. Loki, the trickster, moved unseen, weaving threads of deceit with a patience that matched the weaving of the Norns themselves. His smile was calm, yet beneath it lay the promise of chaos, a promise that would echo through the halls of gods and mortals alike. For years, Loki had walked among the Aesir, a companion to Odin, a brother to Thor, a friend to Baldr. Yet beneath the mask of camaraderie, his heart bore resentment. He had been bound by the law of the gods, mocked by those he called kin, and restrained from expressing the cunning and chaos that flowed through his blood. Now, with the twilight of the gods approaching, his patience had ripened into action. The seeds of betrayal were sown subtly at first. A misplaced word here, a manipulated thought there, a secret shared with one god and twisted to mislead another. Even the wise Allfather could not detect the full breadth of Loki's designs. Each act, no matter how small, contributed to the growing storm, each whisper feeding the inevitable clash foretold by fate. Fenrir, still chained upon the plains, felt the touch of his father's influence, even through Gleipnir. Rage simmered within him, and Loki's murmurs stoked the flames. They fear you, my son. They bind you not for protection, but for their cowardice. One day you will feast upon their pride. Fenrir's growls shook the earth beneath him, and the whispers of the wolf traveled through the roots of Yggdrasil, reaching even the ears of Odin. In the depths of the oceans, Jörmungandr stirred. Loki's cunning reached him as well. Patience, serpent, the trickster hissed. When you rise, the world will taste your fury. The oceans themselves shall obey your coil, and even Thor will struggle against your might. The serpent writhed, tasting the salt and spray of the seas, preparing silently for the day when the prophecy would demand his emergence. Even within Helheim, Loki's influence spread. He whispered to Hel, nurturing ambition and cunning, reminding her of her role in the end. The living will fall, the dead will rise, and destiny will call your legions forth. Wait, and the timing shall be perfect. Hell's shadowed army shifted in anticipation, sensing the stirrings of betrayal that would soon ripple through the 9 realms. Yet Loki's most daring act of treachery was yet to come. His attention turned to Baldr, the god of light and joy, whose laughter had brightened Asgard for centuries. Loki's mind wove a plan as intricate as any web spun by the Norns to use Baldr's innocence and the trust of the gods against them, igniting the first true act that would signal the approach of Ragnarok. Through subtle manipulations, Loki learned of Baldr's one vulnerability: mistletoe. The Allfather and the gods, believing Baldr invincible, had overlooked this smallest of threats. Loki, with patience honed over countless years, prepared the means to exploit it, knowing that even a single act of betrayal could unravel the threads that held Asgard together. Among the gods, suspicion began to stir, though none could identify its source. Murmurs of unease spread through the halls, whispers that hinted at treachery and deceit, yet they were dismissed as paranoia. The seeds of betrayal had taken root, invisible yet potent, destined to bloom at the perfect moment. Odin, sensing shadows where there should be none, contemplated the warnings of the Norns and the restlessness of the children of chaos. He knew that betrayal was coming, though he could not yet name its form. His wisdom could see the threads of destiny, yet some strands remained hidden, twisted and dark, awaiting their moment. The trickster's plan was subtle, elegant, and devastating. With each passing day, Loki's influence grew stronger, touching gods, mortals, and creatures alike. Every secret, every whisper, every act of misdirection was a thread in the tapestry of the coming end. And so the road to Ragnarok continued, its path paved with deceit and cunning. The wolf thrashed in his chains, the serpent coiled silently in the deep, the dead waited in Helheim, and Loki's hand guided them all, unseen yet omnipresent. In Asgard, the Allfather stood vigilant, aware that betrayal walked among them, yet unable to pinpoint its origin. The seeds had been sown, and soon the first sprout would appear, a herald of the twilight that would consume gods and mortals alike. The stage was set, the threads of fate tightened, and the first act of treachery, subtle yet irreversible, moved the world closer to the long-foretold end. Chapter 9. Dreams of Death. The halls of Asgard were bathed in the golden glow of sunlight, yet even in the warmth, a shadow stirred. Baldr, god of light, whose laughter and presence had long brightened the hearts of gods and mortals alike, dreamed. Night after night, the same visions haunted him, a shadow stretching across the fields of Asgard, the gleam of sharp weapons, and a darkness consuming the joy he held dear. In these dreams, Baldr saw the Norns weaving threads of inevitability, their hands steady and unerring. He saw the wolf, Fenrir, muscles coiled and teeth bared, straining against chains that bound him, the rage in his eyes a reflection of fate itself. He saw Jörmungandr thrashing in the seas, the waters rising and swallowing lands, and Hel, queen of the dead, raising her silent army from the depths. Baldr woke with a start, the golden halls of Asgard feeling colder than any winter night. His heart was heavy with the weight of his visions, yet he could not comprehend their full meaning. In the light of day, the world seemed unchanged, yet he knew that shadows lingered where none should exist. He sought the counsel of Frigg, his mother, who saw more than the gods themselves. Frigg, wise and vigilant, had long sensed the peril approaching her son. Baldr, she said, her voice trembling with quiet urgency. Your dreams are warnings. The threads of fate are moving, and danger approaches. You are cherished by gods and mortals alike, yet even your light is not impervious. Frigg traveled across the 9 realms, beseeching every being, every element, to swear an oath that no harm would come to Baldr. The sun, the moon, the fire, the water, the metals, the stones, even the beasts of the land and the creatures of the sky all swore to protect him. Yet, in her haste and devotion, one smallest of plants, mistletoe, was overlooked, unnoticed in its seeming insignificance. Meanwhile, Loki, ever watchful and patient, observed from the shadows. He had learned of this overlooked vulnerability and plotted with a patience that stretched across countless moons. The All-Father seeks to protect what he cannot save, he whispered to himself, and the threads of destiny shall unravel with a single, unsuspecting act. Baldr shared his unease with the other gods, yet they dismissed his fears. Thor, ever brave, laughed and said, "Nothing can harm the god of light. Fear is for mortals, not for you." But Baldr's heart knew otherwise. The visions, the foreboding whispers, and the unrest in the natural world pressed upon him, an invisible weight of fate. As the days passed, the dreams grew darker, more vivid. Baldr saw himself standing in a field of shadows, surrounded by friends and kin, all smiling, even as unseen daggers pierced the air. He heard the faint laughter of a trickster and felt a cold presence guiding the inevitable. Even Odin, in his wisdom, could not soothe the fear gnawing at the god of light. The Allfather, sensing the gravity of Baldr's visions, convened the gods in secret. "Dreams are the language of destiny," Odin said. "Baldr sees what is to come. We must act with care, yet understand that some threads cannot be untangled, no matter our might." But Loki's hand was already in motion. Subtle manipulations, hidden whispers, and veiled provocations prepared the stage for the coming act. The seeds of betrayal sown in Asgard began to sprout, invisible yet potent, reaching their tendrils toward the unsuspecting god of light. Baldr, restless and haunted, wandered the golden halls at night, feeling the pulse of destiny as a cold echo beneath the laughter and music of Asgard. The world seemed bright, yet he sensed the shadow beneath it, a darkness approaching as inevitably as the turning of the seasons. In Helheim, the Queen of the Dead observed silently, the whispers of the fallen reaching her, even from afar. The wolf, the serpent, and the threads of treachery all moved in concert, heralding the approaching twilight. And Loki, ever patient, waited, knowing that the culmination of his designs was near. The dreams of death continued to plague Baldr, visions of light consumed by darkness, joy smothered by inevitability, and the golden halls of Asgard trembling under the weight of unseen forces. Even the gods felt the tension, the quiet tremor of fate vibrating through the world, warning that the first act of the final tragedy was at hand. And thus, the road to Ragnarok advanced, each step shadowed by the whispers of destiny, the malice of the trickster, and the inevitability of the coming end. The god of light, brilliant yet vulnerable, stood upon the precipice of his fate, unaware that the threads woven by the Norns and the hand of Loki were closing ever tighter. Chapter 10. The blind gods. Ere the halls of Asgard trembled not with the clash of weapons, but with the quiet dread of inevitability. Baldr, radiant god of light, stood among the gods, a figure of perfection and joy, unaware that the threads of destiny had already tightened around him. The golden spires reflected the morning sun, yet shadows lingered where none should be. Loki, the trickster, moved among the gods in disguise, his smile calm and measured. Patience had guided his every step, and the plan he had nurtured for countless moons was now within reach. He had discovered the one vulnerability overlooked by Frigg's Oathsta, small, seemingly harmless mistletoe. From this unassuming sprig, he would strike the first blow in the unraveling of the worlds. The gods, still unaware of the impending doom, gathered to honor Baldr. Test your strength, throw, play, and laugh, they said, for they believed him invulnerable. Swords, spears, stones, even flames were cast at him, bouncing harmlessly off his shining form. Laughter filled the halls, yet beneath it lay a tension no one could name. Among the gathered the blind god stood uncertain, guided only by the hand of his kin. Loki approached him silently, a subtle whisper in his ear. "This one is safe," Loki said, handing him the sprig of mistletoe. "It will not harm you, but it may reach the heart of the beloved." Unaware of the trickery, accepted the branch, his movements cautious yet obedient. Baldr, laughing as he deflected another spear, did not see the subtle spark of fate that glimmered at the tip of the mistletoe. Loki's lips curved with satisfaction, and in that instant, the culmination of treachery was set into motion. Raised the sprig, guided by the unseen hand of the trickster, and cast it. The sprig struck, and a shiver passed through the golden halls. Baldr, radiant as ever, faltered, then fell, his laughter silenced by the fatal strike. The light dimmed in Asgard, and a hush descended, heavy with disbelief and sorrow. Odin's single eye, sharp and all-seeing, caught the betrayal too late. Fenrir's growls and Jörmungandr's thrashing in the distant seas were distant echoes compared to the heartbreak that now gripped the hearts of the gods. Frigg's cries pierced the silence, mourning the child she had sought to protect. Yet even her grief could not alter the threads of fate that had woven this act. Chaos erupted in the golden halls. Thor's fury roared like a storm, and the gods surged forward, but Baldr's light had faded, leaving only the echo of destiny fulfilled. Loki, hidden in shadow, felt no guilt, only the satisfaction of the first step in the unraveling of the 9 realms. He had struck with cunning, subtlety, and precision, and the stage for Ragnarok had been set. Even in death, Baldr's presence lingered, a radiant echo that reminded gods and mortals alike of what was lost. The golden halls, once filled with laughter and joy, were now silent, touched by the shadow of betrayal. Odin's mind raced with foreknowledge, and even he could not foresee all the consequences that would flow from this moment. Hel, watching from her icy realm, noted the act with satisfaction. The first true blow had been struck, and the threads of destiny now moved with renewed urgency. Fenrir thrashed in his chains, Jörmungandr stirred in the deep, and the dead prepared under the watchful eyes of Hel. The wheels of the final conflict had begun to turn. Baldr's death was more than tragedy, was the catalyst that would ignite the final saga. Loki's cunning had achieved what brute strength and wisdom could not prevent. The first act of Ragnarok had begun, and the 9 realms trembled under the weight of prophecy. In Asgard, sorrow mingled with foreboding, and even the bravest gods understood that no shield, no hammer, no spell could now delay the inevitable. The blind god, Hr, instrument of tragedy, stood bewildered, a pawn in a design too vast for mortal or divine comprehension. And Loki, ever patient, smiled in shadow, knowing that Chapter 11, Fimbulwinter, the world shuddered beneath an unnatural cold. Fimbulwinter had come, the great and final winter that would precede the twilight of the gods. Snow blanketed the lands, freezing rivers and seas alike, and the winds howled through the 9 realms as though carrying a message of doom. Trees shattered under the weight of ice, and mountains groaned beneath the relentless frost. Mortals and gods alike felt the encroaching chill. Crops withered, animals perished, and even the bravest hearts trembled. The sun, dimmed by endless storm clouds, offered little warmth, and the golden glow of Asgard was muted beneath the oppressive shadow of frost and snow. The air itself seemed heavy with foreboding, carrying whispers of the coming end. Odin, seated upon his throne in Lidskjalf, watched the unfolding winter with solemn eyes. He had long foreseen this time, yet the weight of prophecy pressed upon him still. The world grows cold, and the hearts of men and gods alike are tested, he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. Fimbulwinter is not merely a season, it is a herald, a warning of what is to come. Prepare, for soon the clash will begin. Thor strode through the frozen halls of Asgard, his hammer Mjolnir crackling with energy. He could feel the tension building, the pulse of destiny that grew stronger with every falling snowflake. The frost is relentless, he said. It chills the bones, but it cannot freeze our courage. Ragnarok approaches, and we must be ready to face it. Across Midgard, mortals struggled under the unending winter. Villages lay buried beneath snowdrifts, and the cries of hunger and despair echoed through the frozen lands. Even the bravest warriors faltered against the cold, yet whispers of gods and prophecies spread, keeping hope alive amidst the gloom. Loki, ever the observer, watched the mortal world with a cold smile. Fimbulwinter is the first true strike against order, he whispered. The frost weakens their hearts, saps their courage, and readies the world for the chaos to come. The stage is set, and soon all shall see the threads of destiny unravel. In Helheim, the dead stirred, sensing the weakening of the living. Hel's army of spirits shifted and prepared, their movements silent but purposeful. The frost and shadow of Fimbulwinter allowed the dead to move, unseen, their presence a reminder that the balance between life and death was tilting ever closer to the edge. The children of chaos, too, felt the winter's embrace. Fenrir strained against his chains, the ice forming around him, only fueling his fury. Jörmungandr writhed beneath the frozen seas, each movement creating waves that shook the lands and signaled his growing strength. Even in confinement, the power of Loki's progeny surged with the cold, their anticipation mirrored in every howl, every ripple, every shadowed stir. Odin convened the gods, calling them to council despite the bitter winds. "Fimbulwinter tests us all," he said. "It is a herald of Ragnarok, a warning that the end is near. We must strengthen our bonds, our courage, and our resolve. Soon, the fields of Vigrid will call to us, and the final battle will unfold." The gods prepared, gathering weapons, forging alliances, and readying spells that had lain dormant for centuries. Yet even their might was tested against the relentless cold. The frost did not merely chill the body, it gnawed at the spirit, reminding gods and mortals alike that the end would not be swift. Chapter 12. The twilight of the gods. The sky burned with fire, and the earth trembled beneath the weight of destiny. Ragnarok had come, the twilight foretold in whispers and dreams, in visions and omens. The 9 realms quaked as gods, giants, monsters, and mortals marched toward the fields of Vigrid, where the final battle would decide the fate of all worlds. Fenrir, free from his chains, howled into the sky, a sound that split mountains and echoed across the seas. Jörmungandr rose from the deep, his massive coils writhing and crashing waves upon the lands of men. Hel's army of the dead spilled forth from shadowed halls, silent yet relentless, moving under the cold command of their queen. And Loki, the trickster, watched from the shadows, his smile calm, his eyes reflecting the chaos he had set into motion. Odin, seated upon his throne, felt the weight of centuries in his single piercing eye. He had foreseen much, yet even he could not know the full course of the coming battle. The Allfather stood, his spear Gungnir in hand, ready to face the fate that had been woven into the threads of Yggdrasil. The clash began with the roar of Fenrir, the bite of Jörmungandr, and the march of the dead, their weapons sparking against the frost and flame that filled the battlefield. The air was thick with the cries of the fallen, the clash of steel, and the roar of creatures born of chaos and wrath. Thor, hammer raised, faced the serpent of the deep. Mjolnir struck, lightning meeting the scales of Jörmungandr, yet each blow shook the earth and the heavens alike. Waves crashed upon the battlefield, yet Thor held firm, a storm unto himself, embodying the courage and defiance of Asgard. Fenrir lunged with fury unmatched, tearing through lines of gods and mortals alike. Tyr, who had sacrificed his hand to the wolf long ago, met him with courage unwavering, striking at the wolf with precision born of foresight and valor. Their clash shook the very foundation of the 9 realms, and the howl of the wolf mingled with the cries of the fallen. Hel's legions pressed upon the living shadow against light, silence against song. The dead struck without mercy, their movements like the relentless tide of winter, their eyes reflecting the inevitability of fate. Even the bravest warriors felt despair gnawing at their hearts, yet the courage of gods and heroes held them firm against the tide of shadow. Amidst the chaos, Loki moved unseen, striking at both friend and foe with cunning and guile. His manipulations shaped the battlefield, ensuring that the prophecy unfolded exactly as foretold. The threads of destiny, woven by the Norns, tightened with each passing moment, drawing all toward the final resolution. Baldr, once taken by the blind arrow, appeared in visions to those who mourned, a reminder of the light lost and the cost of treachery. His absence fueled the fury of gods and mortals alike, igniting the courage that would defy even the shadows of fate. The battle raged across the fields of Vigrid, sky and earth alike, consumed by fire, frost, and fury. Mountains crumbled, rivers boiled, and the seas heaved under the weight of gods and monsters alike. Every strike carried the power of prophecy. Every cry echoed the inevitability of destiny. Odin met Fenrir in final confrontation, their clash echoing across the 9 realms. The All-Father struck with wisdom and strength, yet the wolf's fury was unmatched. Thor, locked in battle with the serpent, fought with valor, lightning and thunder raining upon the colossal beast. Jörmungandr's final thrash sent tidal waves across the lands, while Hel's legions pressed ever forward, relentless and unyielding. In the end, sacrifice and valor met chaos and fate. Gods fell, giants perished, and the earth itself shook beneath the weight of prophecy fulfilled. Yet, even in destruction, the spark of hope remained, for the cycle of death and rebirth was eternal. The 9 realms would endure, reshaped and renewed, even as the old order crumbled. And Loki, the architect of chaos, vanished into the shadows, his work complete, leaving behind a world forever changed. The twilight of the gods had come and passed, leaving legends, sorrow, and the seeds of a new dawn. Thus ended Ragnarok, the epic twilight of the gods, where destiny, courage, and chaos converged. The 9 realms lay in ruin, yet from their ashes, life and light would rise again, and the stories of gods, monsters, and mortals would echo through eternity.